Hello, this is the behind the scenes look at my midterm project, You're in Control. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start up the game as intended, let the original audio play out, give a brief practical overview of the game mechanics, and then we'll go into some explanations of things that I thought were interesting and some of the thought processes behind the design choices. So go ahead and load up the main menu, play, and this brings us into the day one scene.
This on? Hello, and welcome to the reactor facility. We sincerely apologize for the short notice of your deployment and the lack of information thereof. To keep it brief, our facility's automatic control features have been malfunctioning, and we're required to run intermittent tests to restore its functionality. Your job is to keep our systems safe and online during these brief testing periods. To get you started on your first day, I figure I'd give you some pointers. First off, the big red button and the gauge next to it are your primary concern. If the reactivity levels get too high, I think you can figure out what might happen. That button will temporarily drop the reactivity, but you can't just hold it down. There's a cooldown on it, so use it wisely. Second, the main reactor's steam intake is controlled by that valve to your right. The higher the steam pressure, the faster the reactivity will climb, so make sure you turn that valve now and then to make your life easier managing the reactivity. Lastly, we both know that jobs like these are pretty high stress, so the reactor facility has graciously provided you with a pack of cigarettes to keep your stress down. If you can't keep a level head here, things can go south pretty quick. That's all the info we have for you now, and you'll be notified when the day's tests have concluded. Remember, if you mess up, everyone is screwed. You're in control here.
Alright, and now the game has started. Fun fact, in the core game logic running whether or not the player has won, which is just on a timer set in a coroutine, the game waits for the length of that audio clip to play before starting moving any of these needles or the stress meter. And you can see, I have just started getting stressed out there. Wait a little bit and you will hear the heartbeats and breathing sound effect. And stress goes away. Alright, that is pretty much it in terms of how the game works. I could let the game run down and show what a fail state looks like. A win state just plays audio and moves you on to the next day, which is identical except for the audio and the difficulty level. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go into some things I thought were interesting. First of all, everything on this panel is unique art assets. Figured I'd throw that in there. This was actually the only thing I ended up making in Blender just because it was a weird shape to try and make with default Unity objects. The core game logic is being run on the ceiling, and you can see the update controller references the player. That's because the player has a script where all the controls, which effectively means the needle movements and the stress levels, do not increase until the audio is done playing, and that's implemented through the player. The game timer is run, and then the fade canvases, which play whenever the player completes the day, just fades to black and then cuts to the next scene. Some other interesting things. The stress level actually doesn't impact the game any way other than as an annoyance, so you could let the stress level sit there. I sort of just wanted to exploit the fact that, seeing the red flashing and the breathing makes the player think, oh, I need to resolve this, when you could just play the entire game with maximum stress and there's no consequences. And I'll chalk that up to a design decision as opposed to laziness. Anyway, the main needle movement scripts I'm going to pull up here. You can see the way it works is this needle is being moved at a constant rate, constantly returning what the needle position is. When the button is pressed, which implements the interactor and interactable classes that I created, or rather, that was really stuff I more copied down just because implementing this non-natively was way out of my depth in terms of my C# and Unity skills. When the button is clicked, it sets is reversing to true, and when is reversing is true, over in the needle move script, it will reverse the angle of the needle by a constant amount. That is 50. Or 70, honestly. The game logic is pretty spaghetti at this point. I just kind of trust that it works. And it does. The pressure gauge needle, which is modifying how much the needle is actually being moved by. If I scroll in farther and select the needle, you can see the steam gauge modifier is tied to the position of this. If it is halfway up its maximum position, it will increase the speed by 1.5 fully, 3, 0, we'll do 0. So that just modifies how fast you're losing the game effectively and turning the valve. Reverses it only while you're holding down the E key. I had to implement a separate interactor condition to accommodate for holding it down. The cigarettes are also pretty simple. Whenever that's interacted with, it plays or rather, increases the alpha. The actual cigarette model is just a canvas being created as opposed to a model to avoid any weird visual glitches. Plays the smoke. Pretty simple. And in the event of a game over, really quickly, you've got to remember, I believe it is in cut to black. It plays the explosion sound, sends the signal out that the game is over to the actual game over script, and then sets a canvas to cut to black, wait 2 seconds, and then load you back into the main menu. There's a lot more I wish I could talk about, but I do want to keep the time down. I see I'm already over time. If you have any additional questions about how I made this, feel free to let me know, and I will be happy to answer you. But yeah, this is the midterm game. I had a lot of fun learning how to develop it.